All right, welcome to episode 20 of the Rainier Strength Pod. I am here with one of the strongest human beings to ever step foot on a USAPL and Powerlifting America platform, Mr. Jared Martin himself, boasting a 21-23 raw total, 866 squat, 462 bench, and 821 deadlift. Not to be outdone by a 2,557 single ply total, 1025 squat. That is a 1,025 pound squat, 683 bench, and 848 deadlift. Jared Martin is an absolute beast, and I'm honored to have him here on my podcast. Jared, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. Yeah, been looking forward to the podcast for the last couple of weeks, and happy to be here to, chop it up and have a good conversation.
Yeah, man, and you are one of the elite lifters in powerlifting. I mean, whether we're talking about raw or equipped, I mean, you are a force to be reckoned with either way. Your resume speaks for itself. But let's go back a little bit to kind of the inception of powerlifting. How did you get started? I know it's kind of a cliche question, but everyone has a different journey. So how did you get started in the sport?
So I was little after my 12th birthday, before I turned 13. I had been working for some farmers off and on in where we lived, and I had played some baseball, but it really was not my calling for a sport. Like, I enjoyed my time with it, but I struggled with a lot of the aspects of playing baseball. And I mean, like at 12, you really, you're still trying to figure things out. But my dad kind of sat me down. I was getting bullied a little bit, kind of just in everyday life. I was homeschooled, so it was mostly at like different, homeschool groups and things like that we went to. And My dad kind of sat me down, and I had signed up to play like a Pop Warner League football, but it wasn't actually Pop Warner. It was all the kids who didn't play Pop Warner. So there was a separate league for that. So my dad kind of sat me down, and he's like, you can either work on being really fast or you can work on being really strong. And I was like, well, strength kind of follows that trajectory of like, I was already like throwing hay bales, I was already cutting wood, stuff like that. So, um, ended up getting on animalpack.com's website. I went into the vitamin shop one day. There happened to be a power lifter there. And he, like, I walked in and I'm like looking at all the supplements back in the day. I don't know if they still do. They had a glass case and it was like locked, and it was all the supplements that they weren't allowed to sell to people who were like under the age of 18. It was mostly, I think it was mostly like your test boosters and stuff. I don't even remember. But I'm like looking in this case, and this guy walks up and he's like, "How old are you, man?" And I just turned 12 a little while ago, blah, blah, blah. And he points me in the direction of like, "Hey, man, we just need to get your nutrition under. You need to be taking protein. You need to be taking vitamins." And it was the animalpack.com or the Animal Pack multivitamin. Got on their website. I downloaded every single program they had. Like, I worked odd jobs to pay for reams of paper. I paid for my own ink, and my parents owned a printer, and just printed off everything I could find. But that's kind of like the break in, I needed to get stronger to play sports. It also started helping. I mean, like, as you can imagine, like working on the farm and stuff, like I'm working with animals, I'm working with, like I said, hay bales and stuff like that. I became more valuable then as well, so that kind of led into playing, a few years of, that we'll just call it Pop Warner football. Um, Trained all the way through that. And as an incoming freshman, I was already out totaling most of the seniors at the high school as I walked in to play football my freshman year.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the break in.
Yeah. I remember those supplements back in the day too. I worked at GNC from 2011 to like 2012 and a half or 13. And we used to have like Jacked and the hydroxycut
Yep.
that had ephedrine, and just like, yeah, it was really unruly back in the day, especially like the late 2000, the early 2010s, I should say. It was,
Did you did you ever take NO Explode in
yeah,
the red container?
yeah,
The old
yeah, the
formula?
very
Yeah.
first one.
That was
Yeah,
a good one.
yep,
Dude,
yeah,
I remember one time I took it, like, so I would bike I would ride my bike 2 miles to the high school for morning lifting for football, and I took it right when I got there. Nobody was able to get a hold of me because this is before like cell phones were a big thing. Like, yeah, before cell phones and all that stuff. So like they had no way of getting hold of me, but they told all the other team players because they were already at the school, lifting was canceled. So I'm like pacing outside the doors waiting to get into the gym. I'm like hopped up on Eno Explode and like I'm what 14 and a half, 15 at the time. And I'm just like ready to go and like just fuming because I wanted to get in there and start lifting. And then finally, like a security guard came and was like, dude, everything's shut down for today. And I'm like, this sucks. And I had to like, I got on my bike, pedaled home. And luckily, I did have a small gym like set up at my house. So I was able to get my workout in. But I remember that day vividly
Yeah.
that I was just like, you got the jitters and you're like ready to go.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, and like the very like original C4 had DMAA in it too, and it was just,
Yep.
dude, it was crazy. I was like 18, 19, taking 3 scoops of this stuff, dude. Just like
Oh,
terrible.
it was the Wild West. Nobody told us like the directions on the back. Nobody read those.
Yep.
I was talking with some lifters not too long ago. Did you ever do the creatine and grape juice?
Yep.
Were you ever on that trend? Yeah,
Yeah,
and it
dude.
always had to be Welchers too. Yeah,
Yeah.
and we were talking about that how like they always whenever you'd go in and you'd buy your creatine, they'd be like, you need to take that with grape juice, and it's like they made no sense, but that's what everybody was told.
Yeah, or they would have, and then Muscle Tech came out with the creatine in the big container that already had like 60 grams of sugar in it. So they were like,
Yep.
it's perfect. It's like your insulin spike and it'll shuttle it into the muscle cell. And it was just all bro science, but we were all doing
Yeah,
it.
everybody just wanted to get big and strong, and it was like whatever the biggest guy at your gym was doing, you were like, hey man, what do I need to do? And they're like, Welch's, grape juice, and creatine. I don't know.
Yeah, dude. So, what was your? I'm gonna assume that your first meet was raw. Is that correct?
Yes, I just recently got into the single ply equipment within the last, like 2.5 years. You could call it three maybe, but yeah, my first competition was 2006. I went to a high school powerlifting meet. They don't have it anymore. The schools kind of they didn't have enough volunteers to do it and such, so it technically wasn't what we would consider a full power meet now. It was bench, power clean, and deadlift. So those were my early days of competing, like my kind of introduction into what is, lifting in a, competition like. So definitely had, we'd bench and I would always be way behind. Power clean, I would be kind of in the middle, and then always would pull for the win on deadlift.
Yeah. So what was your introduction to the equipment since it was so new to you, only like 2 years in? What was the first kind of thing that catapulted you into the equip side?
So, I mean, there were a lot of things, and we can get into each kind of different thing that led to it. But I really, as I was competing raw, was not really ever part of the conversation of like, hey, who's gonna take podium, who's gonna take like top spots, and like after you take second like 5, 6, 7, 8 times, the expectation is like, you know, the guys that I'm competing with are dropping off, whether it's due to injury, family stuff, like all respectable reasons to not continue to compete or to take some time off. But still, like in the recaps and stuff, when these other podcasts would do like, hey, who's gonna win the big meet? A lot of times, like I'm either at the bottom of the podium or off the podium. So kind of just got tired of Raw, just being that if you're not part of the inner circle group, you're not getting any of the like attention. And I mean, to be honest with you, it just felt like disrespect. So at the time, when I broke my squat record, I think it was what was it, 393? So it was like 866 pounds, 393 kilos. When I broke that one, I actually was having trouble walking due to like a hip injury on my left side. So I had been dealing with that for like 6 to 8 months. And then I had that same meet. I had missed my second bench. It was Nationals 2023. Sorry, missed my third bench. My shoulders were so banged up from just lifting that I had to sleep with pillows under my arms, and I could not. I could do like maybe one or two working sets of bench a week, but I wasn't able to do much accessories. Only like I had no range of motion in my shoulders, and at that time I wasn't working a traditional like 9 to 5 job or anything, so I had no health insurance. So there was no way for me to go get it checked out. Um, so all that leading into, I bought a suit, squat suit, and a bench shirt off of Facebook Marketplace. The person had it listed, and they were like, "It's too big for me, not really my thing." I used it 2 times. I was like, perfect. Like, it's brand new equipment for half the price. So I started kind of working it in because my hip was getting so bad that I could not. My right knee was so swollen and my left hip was so bad that when I would squat down, I would shift to the bad hip, but then also could not get to depth with anything over like 200, 225 kilos, which is like 440 to 500 pounds, which when you're talking about trying to chase down, at that time, I was trying to chase down an 881 squat in a full power meet raw, drug tested, drug free. So like, at that point, like you're like, I'm trying to figure out what am I going to do to continue to be able to squat heavy. So when after I bought the suit, I just kind of put it on. I didn't have any alterations done to it. I didn't. The straps were not tailored. So like even if you put the straps up, I mean they came up almost over my head. So I was really just using it suit bottoms. So I would work up to my heavy sets, and I would do 1 or 2 sets heavy like raw work, and then I would add a little bit of weight, or I would keep it the same depending on how I was feeling. I'd put the suit bottoms on, and I wouldn't put wraps or anything on, just the suit bottoms. And I started to feel like I was able to still train heavy, but my hip was starting to heal. So like it wasn't just getting pounded every single week. And then I sent a video to my coach because we had kind of talked about me using it, but we really hadn't like discussed how or what I was going to even do with it. I just started using it one day or one squat day. I sent him a video of me taking like a triple at like I think it was like 390 to 400 kilos with the suit bottoms on. And I was like, hey man, like, do you think this is actually helping? Like, how's the depth look to you? Blah, blah, blah. And he texted me back and he's like, did you know that the open American record right now is like 415 kilos? And I was like, no. And he's like, I really think we need to look into like going to an equipped nationals and seeing if you can break that
Yeah.
because you're doing a triple with suit bottoms, no knee wraps, anything, and you're 25 kilos off, or whatever it was. So I was like, yeah, let's look into that. I originally got into the gear and then I started doing the shirt was 2 or 3 sizes too big. So anybody that knows equipment, like literally was not getting any help until it was almost like 2 inches off the chest. But that little bit of give or the little bit of assistance off the chest, my shoulders started getting healthier. And it also kept me in a path, like it held me in the path instead of allowing my shoulders to kind of go out or get messed up. So then like my shoulders start healing up and my bench starts going up raw. And my first couple of competitions I competed in that shirt, my first equip nationals, and then when I went to the Arnold, I was still using that shirt that was 2 or 3 sizes too big. So my introduction to single ply was more for health reasons,
Mm.
like trying to get my body to heal up, and then you know started really looking forward to bench days. And anybody who knows me, if I'm starting to get excited for bench press and like benching and stuff, like we found something good. Let's keep rolling with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the bench press, man. I'm like a old school meathead, dude. I'm a big fan of the bench press, even though of the three it offers like the least amount of practical utility. I don't care. I fucking love it.
I enjoyed benching in the bench shirts, because there's a very like, I mean, and who can't get excited about benching the kind of weight you can take in a shirt?
Yep.
Um, but just the intensity that you have to show up with as well, and like just the focus. Because like, I mean, for me, sometimes raw, like some of my raw workouts, I'm going in and it's especially when my shoulders are so banged up, it's basically you're doing like chaos bench or like the bamboo bar or something, and you're trying to heal up your body, and it's just like it's not fun. It's something we all have to do, but like, not something to wake up and really get fired up about. So
Yeah.
yeah, really like doing that, and I like using the different bench adders as they call them. Whether it be the bench daddies or Titan has their line of Rams. Enjoy using those too.
Yeah. Did you notice a lot of like how quick did you pick up on the equipped technique versus raw? Did it take you a while to learn the gear? Did it kind of feel like a fish out of water at first, or was it something that came a little bit easier for you?
So it's hard to like really go into like how long it took me because I started squatting in the suit bottoms, and that's the suit that I took to China with me. So that suit has been with me from day one, just had alterations done to it. But also I think being an equipment that was so large, like it was so much bigger, I didn't have to be perfect in my technique yet. And as we kind of progressed in like, hey man, if you actually want to go to like continue to be on national stages, continue to be on international, like compete internationally, you're gonna have to get tighter equipment. You're gonna have to start wearing your wraps are gonna have to start being tighter. Your suit's got to get tighter. You got to start wearing an actual bench shirt, not something that's 3 sizes too big. And then getting into a deadlift suit. So like my first 2 or 3 competitions, I did not wear a deadlift suit either. So I was kind of like a hybrid equipped lifter. So in the squat suit, I transitioned to that pretty well. I think that was pretty quick for me to pick up because also, like I said, it was not the legs were not clamped down yet. Like it wasn't like so tight on my legs that like my third attempts typically in between second and thirds we'd be pulling my suits down, like my suit legs down because it's sliding up as I'm lifting. And like most guys, when you've got that thing set and it's clamped down hard, like the suit is not sliding up your legs as much. So um, the wraps were a big thing for me to learn too. That little bit of rebound. But once you kind of get used to it, I would say anybody who's looking to get started in equipment would be to go with standard sizes. So figure out on like Titan's website, they have like here's your body weight. You take a couple of measurements. This is about what your size should be. I would tell people to go a size above that, get the suit in, and then you can have alterations done to it. Like there's quite a few people. You can get on Reddit. You can message me. I've got my guy, and I've got my guy who does my alterations, and if he can't do it, I know that he'll pass it off to other people that he knows that does the alterations. And I feel like that would be a better way to get started if you haven't ever put on equipment than to be like, I'm going for ultra me tight and like let's just send it. And it's like you can't load up enough weight and your body's not ready for it to actually get work in that suit, as opposed to if you start off like with a very loose suit, getting almost nothing out of it, and then tighten it up over time. Also, it can be a more enjoyable experience for you as a lifter to not be like dumping weight all the time because the suit's just throwing you all over the place.
Yeah, and the rigidity is much different. So it's like if you're used to competing raw, and then you get like the tightest squat suit that you can find. Not only now do you have this pressure from the weight, you got the pressure from the suit. So it's like multiple things feel like they're trying to kill you at once. And one,
Right.
you're not going to hit depth, or you're going to hit depth in the hole and feel like you're going to pass out, or you might pass out because like that pressure adaptation
Right.
is a thing. It's
Oh,
way
for sure.
different.
And I don't know what other lifters do, and I know that you compete a little, you compete a little bit in both, and you use equipment and stuff. For me personally, I like to get in the equipment kind of slowly. So like I will not use knee wraps and straps up on squat the first week I'm back in the equipment. So a lot of my training still stays very raw based, and then I'll filter in equipment, as needed. Um, so yeah, I think that's another thing that people misunderstand about competing in single play or unlimited or whatever equipment is that you don't just jump in and go, okay, I finished up my raw cycle. Now I'm just gonna jump straight into the equipment. We're full send. The heaviest squats I'm gonna take out. Like that's not how it goes.
It's a very bad way to do it. But a lot of people still have that misinterpretation that, the equipment does all the work, man. I can throw on a bench shirt. I'm going to add 400 pounds to my bench. First try, no problem. A lot of people have
Yeah.
that misinterpretation still. It's crazy.
Well, I mean, so I finally did get a custom like fitted to me bench shirt. That's the first shirt that I had where we really had to focus on what's your technique, how does it look rep to rep. I haven't actually really done a lot of sets more than like doubles in that shirt, just because we're more focused on, and when you get up to the top, if you don't lock hard, like it's just going to sit there and you're never going to get a rack call because you're not fully locked out. And that was one of the first shirts that like we could load up that amount of weight where it was all the raw strength I had and all of what the shirt could give me at the time, and then just trying to lock that out at the top. And so then we had to do a lot of work on the that upper tricep in that lockout because you'd get 99% there, and then that last 1% is where people think. Also where when they're new to bench shirts, and I did the same thing, is you think you're locked, but then when you finally get a coach or somebody who refs, and they're like, no man, like you're 98 99% there, then you find out, oh, okay, so that's where that kind of give and take is. You get help at the bottom, but you really got to get strong on that lockout.
Yeah. And did you, when you were experimenting with your bench shirt, did you go from company to company, like Titan to Overkill to Insert, or was it kind of like something where you found what you like kind of right away, right off the bat?
So I, coming from Raw, my mindset was what equipment can I get that is going to be the most consistent? So there, and once you start diving into, from my perspective, once you start diving into like these type of squat suits, these type of bench shirts, this deadlift suit, and you start going with like what's the strap difference and like how to tailor this and how to jack this and blah blah blah, jack the shirt down. You start getting into different techniques, and then you also get into like where some shirts you get like maybe 8 to 10 touches, and that shirt's just done. So when I was researching and everybody that I talked to, they said Titan has the best or the most consistent squat suit material where you can squat in it dozens of times to depth, hundreds of times to depth, and it's not really going to lose that fire or that punch out of the hole. And then same thing kind of with their bench shirts. Um, I had another shirt, and I don't want to talk bad about any companies or anything, but I had a shirt that I wore for a while, and like I said, I didn't really it felt really good for the lockout. Like it was the best lockouts I ever had. But on game day, the shirt we didn't realize, and I did some research afterwards, that shirt was about a 10 to 12 touch shirt. And I had touched so many times in training that my third bench in a big meet, I come down with it and I go to press, and I'm like, it barely gave me anything, and I just like I fought it up. I don't even know how I pressed it because it felt like the shirt like at the bottom was just like I'm done. So we ended up getting the bench press, but then that really made me reevaluate what company I was going to go with for my bench shirt. And I felt like even though the Titan one was a little more difficult for me to learn and had a little bit of a different bar path than the other shirts, it was the most consistent material, and it was going to give me that same hit every single time, whether it was the first touch, eighth touch, 30th touch. Like it was going to be a very consistent shirt um, for me. And then I played around with deadlift suits. I I'm gonna go with velocity now, because Titan has that, like I said, the most consistent material. I used an Inzer at the World Games, just because I feel like the Inzer deadlift suit it's got a little bit more of a stretchy material. So when you're learning how to, whether it's sumo or conventional, when you're learning to pull yourself down into the the start position for the deadlift, I felt like the Inzer one for me gave me a little bit more give. So it wasn't like it just bound up right away. I had a little bit of extra time and or leeway to like get into the deadlift position and then pull, as opposed to like from what I felt with the velocity so far, it's like you got to be ready for the pressure right now. Like it's there is no like lean into it and kind of gradually get down into that pressure. It's like the second that you start, it starts to bind immediately and it's ready to go, which is a good thing if you know how to use the suit. And that's the whole part of it is um raw is run what you brung. It's whatever your body's capable of on the day, blah blah blah. In the equipment, sometimes it does come down to also knowing how the equipment works.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that makes the equip side just so interesting. The alterations that you can make in the meet itself to be more efficient with the equipment. When I was benching in my most recent meet, great guy Jim Surratt over at Hammer Strength and Conditioning, he came over and he was like, look, he grabbed the collar of my katana, pulled it down and said, kind of hunch over a bit. And then as he
Mm-hmm.
pulled it down, I kind of shifted up into it, pulled the collar way down, and just
Yep.
touching was a dream. I mean, and the,
Oh yeah.
you know,
Yeah, that's interesting because I had this a similar experience the first time that they come up and they're like, "All right, lean forward." They pull it down, and then they're like, "No, no, no, arch back," and then they pull the suit down, and it feels super uncomfortable. But then all of a sudden, when you get underneath that bar to like bench, you're like, "Oh wow, that came down in the path right where I needed it." Yeah.
yeah, it's like, dude, this is fucking nothing. It's awesome. And, you know, a lot of the talk around powerlifting too is around the culture, right? Because the culture changes as time changes, ideologies, people's perceptions, all that kind of stuff. Did you notice? I mean, you are an elite powerlifter, whether it's raw or single ply. So, did you notice as an elite competitor a big variance in the culture of raw versus equipped?
It's funny you bring that up, because you interviewed my buddy and teammate Braden. So the funny story that we always talk about is I went to that nationals in 2023, and there was a whole mess with it where not only did I like not get highlighted for anything and just felt very disrespected going into that meet, but I was one of the first people to get that pro card that the USAPL had. I was kicked out of the pro card line. Like they had a specific line for like people who are checking in equipment who have a pro card, and they kicked me out of that line. They're like, "What is your last name?" And I told them, they're like, "You go to that line." And I'm like, "But," and I pulled it up on my phone. I have a pro card, and they're like, "You're not allowed to be in this line. Get over to that line." And I'm like, "Okay." Like I know it's all volunteers and stuff, but it's just like you were supposed to be able to get that card, and that card was like I'm a like you're VIP, like you get to go use the special lines. They have all this stuff set up for you. Um, I didn't really the raw side of things. Very much seems like a I'm here for me. I'm only here for me, and this is what I'm doing. On the equip side, my first nationals, I signed up for it. Braden actually messaged me I think it was like 2 months out from the competition because I signed up kind of late. It might have been even 6 weeks. Like I didn't know if I was gonna go. Like I said, I really hadn't dialed in my equipment at all. I ended up going down. Funny side story. I ended up having to find a guy who did upholstery and went down to him, and I like haphazardly measured where my strap should be, and I'm like, I'll pay you what you need. Can you run me a line right here? Like that's it. That's all I need. And he's like, uh, yeah, okay. And had no idea what it was. He ran me one line and or however it's stitched in his thing. He ran it for both of them. I paid him $20. That's all he wanted. And that's been where my squat suit's been set since. But it was like a last minute, like I couldn't find anybody or else I was going to have to hand stitch it. But yeah, got to the Nationals, USAPL Equip Nationals. And like I said, I had talked back and forth with Braden a little bit. Got there and kind of took all my stuff in, walked over to where they were weighing everybody in, and like the whole 120, 120 plus, and even some 105s came over, and they were like, "You've never e- competed equipped before," like, and everybody introduced themselves. It was like a whole community of just like people, and then everybody just started talking about like what equipment they were running, what bench shirts they were using, why they thought that this deadlift suit was trash, and had they wrecked any equipment or ripped anything, like why they were going with the knee sleeves they were. We talked about like different styles of or ways that people wrap knees and stuff. It was just a completely different experience from going to raw meets, and I don't, I'm not saying that like I'm not part of the problem where like when I would go into raw too, it's kind of like just because everybody else is standoffish doesn't mean I have to be as well. But like also going into that environment, like it creates its own, like you said, kind of atmosphere and, kind of, just the way everybody acts around everybody.
Yeah, and the community of Equipped is phenomenal. It really is something to
Yeah.
experience. I mean, I've met some of the most awesome people that I've met in the sport through the Equipped side of powerlifting. I don't know, maybe because it's a little smaller, it creates like a pocket, where people are a little bit closer. But it really is phenomenal. And
Well, I
also,
mean, there's the pain aspect too, where,
yeah,
where
dude.
we all know that everybody else is suffering through the equipment, and we're all gonna suffer together.
Yeah, dude, it's so bad, dude. Like the bruises, the pressure, the
Yeah.
headaches, the blurry vision. Oh my god, dude. Yeah, shared suffering. Shared suffering.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Trauma bonded.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. Yeah, and shout out to Braden as well, man. I mean, dude, when I came across that kid, I was like, how did I not know about this kid in the first place? And how is everyone not talking about him? The kid is a fucking
Yeah.
animal.
Yeah. He just won the USAPL like worlds. He won by I think it was a single dot point. So like you know, however, I know that going into that meet, he had some injuries and he had some weird things happen during warmups and stuff. That would be a whole nother conversation for him because he'll tell it way better than I will.
Yeah.
But from the outside looking in, man, like he was on point. He did everything he needed to do. And whether you, and like, hey, I've taken enough second places to know whether you win by a kilo, a half a kilo, or you win because you had one dot higher or on body weight. I mean, essentially a win's a win. And, that is what it is. If we're all here for titles, the guy who gets the one extra dot point gets the title.
Yeah. And competing internationally is a whole different ballgame. And
Yeah, yeah.
someone like you that has that international experience fucking twice over, what is that like? Like, what is the adjustment period like for you to be on foreign territory? Just go through that experience of kind of competing abroad.
It's different every single time. For me, it depends on where we're going. Depends on who's like kind of hosting the event as far as like what country. And then it also comes down to like, I've went a couple of times, internationally with the raw side. and I've gone now a few times with the equip side. I will say right now, the Powerlifting America US team that we have right now that all travel, phenomenal. Like, great people. Um, we try to include everybody on everything. We all go do stuff together. I never even went out that I remember. I went to one breakfast um, one time with half the team. Um, so like huge difference there as well. Like the team aspect of it, like we all go try to watch everybody throughout their entire session, and stuff like that. Obviously, if they're going late into the night and somebody's got to compete the next morning, like it's kind of like one of those things of like don't don't go watch and mess up your own prep.
Yeah.
So but yeah, I usually like to get in 3 to 4 days in advance. I like to make sure that I have time to acclimate to the weather or the time change, the you're in a plane for a long time, and like some people like even on the US team were laughing because now I am super heavyweight, even though I'm like at the low end of the super heavyweight weight class. I can't sit still for more than like an hour, hour and a half on a plane. Like I have to go do like body weight squats in the bathroom or like something like that because blood clots can be an issue. You can get edema and like swelling on your body. You can also get, I think, Jesse, I want to say his name right, but I think it's Upa. Um, I don't know if you know of him at all. Him and Ray Williams like battled it out in the super heavies raw for a long time. I think he was one of the first guys to do a 881 plus raw front squat. But he had a time, I believe, where he was on the plane, and when he went to get off, he couldn't stand up. And it was like it's something with like when you go up in the air and come back down, your central nervous system and stuff can have like huge. It can have huge negative effects on you. So yeah, so just trying to make sure that I'm always moving, getting up, and like so you never really sleep for long periods of time. And just getting into country with enough time to get some food in you, acclimate, and then make sure that you're on a good sleeping schedule. So a lot of times it's the way it's worked out recently is I'll get in the morning their time, so wherever I'm traveling to, stay up all day and wait till it gets dark outside to go to sleep, and that's a struggle in and of itself. A lot of times because sometimes you've been up for 24 plus hours by the time you're going to bed.
Yeah.
So
I traveled to New Zealand, Auckland, for pro wrestling, and I remember when I landed, it was just me. And I remember after I landed, kind of just like being in the Auckland airport and stuff, I was just like, wow, like, it was kind of like a shock at first. It was like, I don't know anyone here. I don't know. I have an address. This is all I have is an address. I don't know the currency. I don't know anything. And it was such a big shock. And you most recently were in China of this year.
yeah.
So what was China like? I've never been there.
So I don't have anything really negative to say about China. I had some issues, kind of like leaving the country, but that's a totally other story. While we were there, I think that anybody who has the ability to potentially qualify for the World Games, I would tell them like, at least try. Make the effort to get to the World Games because it's a completely different experience than you'll ever experience as a power lifter ever. I know there are a lot of sports that like there are events where you feel like an athlete.
Mhm.
World Games was the first time that like I felt like I think the closest I'll ever feel to a professional athlete in the sport of powerlifting. Um, from the minute that we arrived to LAX, we were seeing like special lines where you got to go through for World Games. We got into China and like there was like special lines set up for us that only we could go through to go through customs. They had people waiting there for us to welcome us to the country. Um, They had different like free things that the athletes could go and see and do, that were only for World Games athletes. And it was just cool to see, just that every sport was there to do their thing, but also like there was crossover where, you'd be there with, you know, other athletes from other sports, but we're all there for the World Games. So it was a lot of fun. I learned quite a bit about China. And I want to give a shout out to, Powerlifting America. And I know that a lot of the people, especially, James Townsend and Big Mike and a lot of the other guys, they're volunteers, so they're donating their time to go and to coach us and such, but also the work that was done behind the scenes to make sure that we knew, the different apps that we had to download, and there was paperwork, like special paperwork we had to do to go to China, and some of it, like, you'd download it, you'd submit it, and then you'd have to like go back into the app and do some stuff, and like just the extra hassle and work that they did to do that was really above and beyond, to make my life easier. Like it took a lot of stress off of me that like I'd get a text at random times during the day because everybody's got crazy schedules. Like, hey man, like in the next hour, I really need you to do X, Y, and Z. And like, sometimes I'm like, I can't. Okay, like let me like go check with my boss that I have 15, 20 minutes to go do this thing. But yeah, it was just as chaotic as it was, it could have been way worse, but that's how all of these, and that's one thing I would say to anybody who hasn't competed internationally as well. It's not just I got on an airplane, I flew to another country, I showed up and I lifted. There are so many other things that come into play that you'd never even think about. Like I've probably forgotten things out of like I don't ever want to remember that I had to do that because it was so stressful.
Yeah.
One thing for me is they flagged my passport because it was getting ready to expire. I had to go in and I had like 2 or 3 days to fill out all the paperwork and overnight it and send it in, and like had to hope that they would finish it, get it back to me within the like rush amount of time, or else I didn't have a passport to go. So like we thought I had enough time, and based on my calculations I did, but they were like, dude, like don't even chance it. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that was interesting.
Yeah, I had a friend that went to China, and he had an experience. It was like he went, and his passport photo, he had a massive beard and he had shaved. And so he looked like a totally different person. He said he was like
Yep.
almost detained. He said it took forever for him to get out because they didn't
Yep.
believe it was him. And he was like, fuck, dude, I'm going to get stuck in fucking China.
Yeah.
This is crazy. Like, yeah,
Yep.
very different experience. But you had you had an excellent performance at the 2025 World Games. You took second place at 36 years old in the super heavy class. I mean, that is incredible, especially at the highest level of the sport in the IPF. Tell me about the variance in competing in the USAPL versus Powerlifting America, the IPF. What is the big difference there?
For me, as far as like judging and like the refs are concerned, so far, my experience has been pretty much the same, and that just may be the over 2 decades of competing that I have, where it's like you get to a point where people could say to me like, "Oh, dude, like they really held you on that like press call," and it's like when that happens to you so many times on a bench press where you get held, you kind of start to adapt to it. Or also, I don't know if you've done this, but we've added that into my training sometimes, where like every once in a while they won't tell me, and I come down and I'm like, "Have I not touched yet?" And then they'll tell me to press. So it's like kind of adapting into that like long press calls, or like, "Hey man, like sometimes my coach, when I go down to, hit some like end of prep squats, he'll be like, you got to take this like a third squat. Your last squat, you got red lighted, 2 red lights on depth. So I need you to sink this sucker, and it has to be good. And if it's not good, you don't get accounted towards your prep." And so then, like, kind of going through those situations, because you never know when you're going to be in a situation where, like, you may believe and your coaches may believe, like, hey, man, like that squat was an inch below parallel, but the refs were like, no, it was high. So now you're going into a third attempt. You have to go up or you have no shot at winning. And you have to make it not only deeper, but you have to stand up with it at the same time, like
Yeah.
after you sink it. So like that can play a mental toll if you've never like rehearsed that situation in training, from my opinion. So yeah, James did a great job calling numbers. He we talked about it I think it was the day before or 2 days before. We kind of just went through the game plan of the meet. Um Kind of a funny story on that meet is I like I said, my equipment's all pretty loose. Like it's not like the tightest absolute equipment that you can get. So also we really don't wrap my knees more than like what would be considered a 7 or an 8. Like we may have wrapped it a 9 here and there, like on a like, hey, this is the last squat you're taking for the meet, before your competition. Like let's make sure that the equipment is, or like the knees are wrapped really
Yeah.
tight and stuff. Um Big Mike wrapped my knees for that meet, and he wrapped them so tight that I got wrap burn on my hamstring, on my right hamstring. I had never experienced that before. So I come off of my second attempt squat, and I actually James wanted, I think he wanted to go 400, I think it was like 475 kilos, and we ended up going 465 because I didn't know what was going on with my right hamstring. I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, I my right hamstring might be ripping off the bone right now. Like I have no clue. Like it was in so much pain. Like I said, I had never experienced it before. So he only goes up to 465, which was a big deal because had I had that extra 10 kilos at the end, I may have been able to pull the deadlift that I did and won.
Right.
So and taken first. So I have more experience now, and every competition is an experience in of itself. But yeah, wrap my knees up, and I told him, I was like, dude, I told Mike, I was like, you need to wrap this sucker and make the right leg the best leg because I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And like it didn't click with him either. I don't think. I think that he thought I was like cramping up or something. I would have to ask him. But long story short, yeah, going into deadlifts, while I was warming up, that wrap burn pain came back, and I mean, like my first attempt out there, I literally thought it had just torn, like it was either tearing off or it was like close.
Yeah.
Walking up to my third, I was just like, pull with everything you got. Don't stop because if the hamstring tears and it's literally your last deadlift, all you have to do is stand up and then go to rehab.
Yeah.
So like, and I think that's another mindset thing that you kind of got to decide before you get to a big meet like that is if something feels like it's tearing or is about to tear, you kind of got to make that. I feel like I'd have to make that decision before I get there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to make that decision of like, oh man, if like let's just throw the competition, I'm done. Like I feel like my hamstring's tearing. Like that meet meant so much to me that like it didn't matter if I tore something or something ripped off the bone. Like I was finishing the meet and we were going to be on the podium at the end of the day.
Yeah. And you brought up mindset, and there's a lot of things that go into creating that robust mindset to perform at that level. I've talked to people like Greg Panora, who had a stroke and came back, multiple strokes and came back. Luke Edwards, a personification of fucking intestinal fortitude. The guy sick as a dog, kidneys are failing. He's still competing at the highest level, still showing up at the most hardcore gym in the world and performing. So, no stranger to conversating with people who have the intestinal fortitude to push on no matter what happens. And part of that also is the people that create that environment to help you or bring you up. And one of those people that I've heard extremely is important to your success was your wife. who
Yeah.
recently had passed away. So go over her influence on your career and how she helped make you a better powerlifter and better person.
Yeah, just really just being that support system, like a lot of lifters, whether no matter what level you're at, whether you're just starting out or you just like to, at the local level, if you're competing at the regional, state, or international level, like at every stage of that, you're gonna have injuries, you're gonna have really bad days, you're not gonna feel like training, you're a lot of times, your body's gonna feel so beat up that like life is just miserable because your central nervous system's taxed, your whole body hurts. And so she was just always the person that was there to just either listen, and talk. Like I could talk through like different injuries that I was dealing with, or stuff that was happening, and just like talk through, and then be like, so now how do you? And you just prompt me to be like, okay, so how do we get from being injured to not being injured, or how do we train around that? So definitely was that person that I could always kind of lean on, to be there, as well as took on a lot of the, I mean, to be my size, and I know I'm not a Ray Williams or Blaine Sumner or one of those guys, but to be a super heavyweight or 275, I mean the food consumption is is on another level. There are some days where it's just continue, just fork and just keep chewing and swallowing because it's just a nightmare. um, but yeah, she would help out with a lot of the cooking and just making sure that my diet was as good as it could be. We didn't have a lot of money, and that played into a lot of, in my opinion, that played into a lot of the taking second and not being able to take first. And that's not me making an excuse for why I didn't perform, but when you're not able to, travel the way you need to, get the food you need to, your diet's not really on point, and then you have to lose an extra 8 pounds because you haven't been able to diet down getting up to the competition, that all plays effect. But yeah, she did pass away a little over 2 weeks after my 36th birthday, and that was right before we were getting ready to um, get into World Games prep. Which, when her and I had talked, when I switched over to Equipped, there was Equipped Nationals USAPL. Then I went to the Arnold. Then I went to Iceland for Worlds, or sorry, I went to Powerlifting American Nationals. Then I went to Iceland for Worlds, and then I was going to go to World Games. And we had talked about that after World Games, that was my retirement meet. So I was putting it all out there. This was going to be my last meet for at least 3 years, and potentially was just going to be done. Actually competing, like I was still going to train heavy, but I wasn't going to compete anymore. That was kind of the idea, because we were going to start trying for a kid. So when she passed a few weeks after my 36th birthday, the conversation with both of my coaches was, hey, like, you don't have to make a decision right now, but if you're going to make a run at this, we kind of do need to make a decision now, because we can't make a decision 5, 6 weeks out and try and get you ready. It's just not possible to go from barely training to all of a sudden we need you to squat 1,000 plus. So, um, definitely just kind of got some advice from some different people. Got my mind checked out as far as like just making sure that I had conversations with myself as to like, am I going to be able to mentally go and do this? And it was just more around like I dedicated the meet to her, and it was the best meet I've ever had. I was the most dialed in I had ever been, and I walked into that meet, and I did go 9 for 9, but like I didn't feel like I could miss. Like it didn't matter what the weight was going to be on the bar, and it was was an interesting experience to do that, to walk into a meet, because I'm very realistic. If I'm walking into a meet, my shoulders are all banged up. Like realistically, hey, like if we can get one or two good benches and then go for a third, like that's a realistic like go for 2 for 3 on bench. Like that might be all that my shoulders can handle. But this meet it didn't matter. I was just kind of like on that trajectory of and that mindset of it doesn't matter what my body feels like. It doesn't matter if we fly into country and I'm all messed up and I can't get my sleep schedule down. Like it doesn't matter. Like we're still going to show up. We're going to win the meet and things like that. And so obviously I took second again, but for me, like I definitely I think I put oh man, it was almost 100 pounds on my total from Iceland to China. So we definitely did what we needed to, and had my hamstring not been feeling the way it was, we could have loaded up 400 and went for it. Um, if my hamstring had been feeling better, I probably would have. But I don't. If it hadn't went, I would have dropped a third. So we would have been having a completely different discussion right now as opposed to me just going 9 for 9, getting I think it was like a 12 kilo PR on my deadlift. And so, just, she was definitely the reason that I still went to World Games and competed at that because she had been there for every single meet that I had. She went to the first meet, my first meet ever, USAPL Battle of the Great Lakes. She went with me to that competition. I think my brother went with me to that one. We all kind of traveled to that meet, and we were engaged at the time, but we weren't married. So she was just always part of the powerlifting journey, and if I needed to go train, whether it was out in Chicago or go to Indianapolis to train. She was like, "Hey, like make it happen. We'll make do with what we need to here. We need to make sure that you're prepped for the competition."
And how did you deal with everyone grieves differently? How did you deal with managing that grief and those emotions going onto the World Games, the largest platform for this sport? Doing that internationally is one thing. I mean, the pressure of it all. I mean, there's just so many variables that come in to a meet of that magnitude. So how did you manage that grief and all those emotions going into this meet and still performing at such a fucking level to take second place?
So I think that I would go back to the first time I walked into Quad's gym and I started training with the guys there. I trained alongside Ed Cohen for better part of a decade, and we don't train together now. And obviously there's that whole thing with Powerlifting America and stuff, and I'm not allowed to train with him. But the mindset that we had there was, you have to focus on what you can focus on what you can do, and focus on the things that you can control, and everything else that's out of your hands is out of your hands. So I had a very strong support system. Jeremy Hartman from Hartman Performance Training Systems. He is my game day coach now, and I go down there and train with him and the crew all the time. Now was a big part of it too. So had a lot of people just stop off at the house. After she had passed. Yeah, I think it was a couple days after she had passed. It was like a Sunday. Ed came down and we didn't like I was supposed to train. It was a Saturday. Sorry, it was the Saturday, and I was supposed to train on Friday, but obviously didn't because she passed on a Thursday. And when he got there, we just kind of talked about what was going to happen in the future. Like what were my game plans? How was life? How was I handling everything? Things like that. and then also Jeremy kind of did the same thing, where it was, um, I wasn't just an athlete that, you're writing numbers on a board for, it was like, hey man, like, what are we doing moving forward? How are you doing? Where's your mental state at? Where are you physically and stuff like that. So, um, then, my family, they stepped up in a big way. I had a lot of help taking care of all the things that you never want to have to take care of, for a significant other or a spouse when they pass away. So just a lot of things that you wouldn't expect. So I had, my mom and my dad and all my brothers and sisters were there for various things that I needed. Whether it was, there were a couple of times where your mind isn't like completely there. And so you're, forgetting to go grab food, or you're forgetting that you needed to eat. And, just them being aware that like, hey, like Jared hasn't eaten for like 4 hours. Like, is he hungry? Like,
Yeah.
do you need to get some food in? So, just I would say that primarily the reason that I was as successful as I was and have been to this point has been the support system that I had behind me. I obviously had to be the one to go up and lift the weight, but I never would have got there without the people that were surrounded themselves around me, because there were a lot of people, um, that were not there. Exterior things that kind of happened, and people that presented themselves in a very, very bad way, and brought a lot of extra stress into the situation. But those people, they have to live with those decisions that they made. When my family and everybody kind of came in around me, we were able to shield me from it for the most part. And then also, um, my wife started to realize that, about 4 or 5 years ago, um, this powerlifting was more to me than just lifting heavy circles. Like, at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's lifting heavy circles. Um, but uh, I'm kind of an emotional lifter. Like, there's a lot of emotions that come up. Like, you take pride in being mentally tough, you take pride in lifting heavy weights, you would take pride in executing on the day. And so, like, there were times where I would be going up for a third bench or a third deadlift or like a record squat, and like my emotional state was not that of somebody who was just about to go out and take an attempt at a world record. Like, so we started talking through like how can I like start getting to the point where I'm not having those emotional like ups and downs, because like in lifting, if you're taking a single, you're really only in that lift for maybe 15 seconds. Like, if you count the time that you actually touch the bar to the time that the lift is completed, most of the time you're talking like 10 to 15 seconds, unless it's a grinder or something like that. And I completely understand that there's people that's their thing. For me, it's about 10 to 15 seconds. So like, we started trying to figure out what I could start doing in prep that would make it so that I wasn't such a, my mind was going all over the place, my emotions were all over the map. So I started doing, what I call like an emotional reset. And so it came into play, big time when after she passed, because I knew that I did not want to be having breakdowns in the gym. And I knew that if I was going to train in Indianapolis or be around the team and stuff, I would not want to have a breakdown there. So I developed a way to take myself into that, um, what would be a sad or very negative headspace, and then also had a way to get myself out. So it started off as about a 10 to 15 minute kind of exercise, and it ended up being closer to an hour when I finally got to the point where I could dig all the way down, tear myself apart basically, and then rebuild back up. And it actually started really helping with just my mental health in general. Being able to, because I started developing the mindset of, the everything has a cost. We it doesn't matter what it is. There's always a cost to anything that is good or bad in life, and so the cost to being able to love my wife is now the sadness that I feel now that she's gone. So, um, knowing that that was going to be a thing probably for the rest of my life, I don't mind the sadness, but also I don't want to feel the sadness whenever it comes. I would like to not only respect my wife, but also be able to sit in that and appreciate the fact that I am sad and not be rushed when I am. Because if you're getting ready to take a lift and all of a sudden you feel sad, you have to like shut that off. And so if I'm able to take myself into that headspace and appreciate that and then bring myself out of it after I have fully felt it, as it were, that really helped me. So that's something that I started doing. It was a weekly basis, and then it went to like, and the sadness never really leaves, and I know that there are a lot of people who have lost people that are very close to them, and um, they'll know that what I'm saying when I say the sadness never really leaves. There's always kind of like this feeling of something's kind of missing, um, and so like I didn't need to do those emotional resets as often because I was starting to regain control of myself and my composure, and um, not just it hitting me out of nowhere. And then my roommate in China, Jesse Badeau. Great up and coming lifter. You've probably seen him. He's got a phenomenal bench. The guy's going to do great things. In the coming years. I mean, he's already doing great things, but he's a great person too. What he does for a living is a phenomenal. Just give back to the community. But him and I kind of had a conversation. I told him, I said, "Hey man, like the night before the competition, I'm going to need about an hour, hour and a half in the room." And he was completely cool with it. He didn't really ask me a whole lot of questions. He was just like, "Yeah, whatever you need, man." And he went down to dinner right when it opened. I stayed in the room for about an hour, hour and a half, and then did my thing and went down and ate dinner, and we were good to go for meet day. So that's one of the big things that I haven't really talked about like in an open forum a lot, but I have kind of talked to some of the young men on the team for like HBT and like when I go to seminars and stuff, just like making sure that young men know like it's okay, to feel things, like to have emotions, um, but you don't have to do it in front of everybody. You know what I mean? Like there is an aspect of this where nobody needs to know that you're breaking down or that you're feeling a certain way about things. You can do that by yourself and develop a way to like feel those things, acknowledge that they're there, and then pull yourself out and become stronger on the other side. So but if you need to tell somebody, and that's a big thing, is if you do need to talk to somebody. I worked in behavioral health for a long time. If you do need to talk to somebody, definitely make that phone call. My phone, like if somebody were to call me on Instagram or like my personal phone, and if they just told me like, "Hey, like you don't know me, but I need somebody to talk to." I mean, like the statistics are about 11 minutes. If you talk to somebody for 11 minutes who's thinking about going down that dark path, like you can pull them out just by listening to them. I've always got 11 minutes, even for a complete stranger. So definitely, if you're going through that, make that phone call. And if the first person hangs up on you or doesn't answer, I would tell somebody, give it at least 3 tries. Try 3 different people before moving on to other things. Or keep calling. Make sure that you get a hold of somebody because somebody will have 11 minutes for you. And if
Yeah.
it has to be me, give me a call on Instagram. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because most people don't have my phone number.
And before, previous to the passing of your wife, did you have this much introspection to your emotional and mental health, or was this kind of the tipping point for you to maybe reframe how you deal with your mental health?
Um, I've always been what I would consider open-minded to things, and like what people tell me, like, hey, this would be good for you, or this could be good for you. She really was, though, the person that I could look to and be like, hey, I'm having like issues with X, Y, and Z. Um, and then to be able to talk that out through. But also, I think that a lot of it comes from just the way my wife also lived her life is that there are people, and I don't think the people realize, um, and it'll make more sense as I get into it, but how much they did unload their burdens onto her. So she would take on people's grief, as it were. So there were many times I would get home from work, and I worked a lot of doubles. I mean, most of my life I've worked 120 to 130 hours, every 2 weeks, or 70 hours a week or something like that. And there were a lot of times I'd come home from a double shift, and she would just be broken, crying over somebody else's like terrible situation that they're going through, that messaged her out of the blue that she hadn't talked to in a decade, and she was working them through what they're going through, and then breaking down on it. And then I just sit with her in the kitchen, on the kitchen floor, and just like help her work through those things. So she really did, I think, help a lot of people, in being that person that always was there to take a phone call. There were times I'd wake up in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, and she'd be on the phone, or she'd be FaceTime, not FaceTiming, Facebook message, like video calling with somebody that I didn't know. Like I've never met this person, but she's like talking them through, or just listening to them talk about the terrible things that are going on in their life. And then she would, then be just distraught for, a whole day after those kind of conversations, just because she was just so sad for those people. So just kind of going through that with her and seeing how, um, when you're able to unload your emotions, or like sit down, deal with them, and then move on, that's a big part of just being able to live life, like you're able to move through life, then you're able to take care of the things you need to take care of. But also, like I said, sadness is part of life, and that's the cost for loving something. So, you have to pay the cost, or, you know
Yeah,
unfortunately, you're not going to be okay.
yeah. It sounded like she had a grandiose amount of empathy. How did you guys meet in the first place? Like, how did you guys meet? When did you get married? How long were you guys together for?
So we met when I believe I had just turned 13. So she would have been 12. We met at a like church, like it was kind of like a church group kind of thing, where
Hmm.
like I went to a different church, and she went to a different church, but then we both met at this third church kind of gathering. And then we kind of stayed in touch. We would see each other like once or twice a year. And then the year I turned 20, we kind of like met back up and started talking a little bit more on like, I think it was Facebook Messenger. And I took a couple of rides down to Indianapolis, because she was going to college down there. I had actually, funny enough, I had been at Bible college, from the year that I turned 18 to the year that I turned 19. So that inner year, I went to Bible college for a year. She was actually down there at that time, and she would have been 15 minutes down the road for me, but we weren't talking at that time. But then I came back home, and now we're 3 hours apart. So yeah, so then we kind of started talking. and just things progressed, and I ended up starting to make the trip down there like every couple weeks. I would go down, well, it's probably every 3 weeks, and just spend kind of the weekend with her. And she had two roommates, which her best friend Alyssa has been a huge. Her best friends Alyssa and her husband Chris have been a huge part of my support system, kind of going through all of this. Um, they lived together at that time, and then we got engaged the year that I turned 21. But due to financial constraints and just like the way life was with her going back to school, and my job situation kind of like in flux here and there, we didn't get married until I turned 26. So right after I turned 26, we got married. So this would have been in October, would have been our 10-year um, wedding anniversary. So yeah, so we got married at 26. So I guess together for about 16, 17 years, something like that.
That's beautiful, man. So what was the mindset for you, or was there a conscious motivation for you to go the drug tested route versus the untested route? Because powerlifting, unlike a lot of sports, has a lot of variance in the ways that you can compete. There's a lot of roads that you can go down, whether it's equipment, raw, tested, untested. So what was there a conscious decision for you to be like, look, I'm not going to take drugs. This is what I'm going to do? Or was it more so just like, I wanted to compete in the IPF and this is what they do, so this is what I'm not going to do?
So it's kind of interesting because after I got done competing in like what would be considered like I don't even know if they still have them really, but backyard meets. So it was just like, hey, this gym is putting on a meet. They're gonna put a squat rack in the parking lot. They're gonna have a deadlift platform, and everybody's gonna bench. Like, and they just structured it that way. And it was a powerlifting meet, and like, run what you brung. 20 or 30 guys show up. You pay your entry fee when you get there in cash. There is no membership, and everybody competes, and the highest total wins. Um, I did a lot of those meets from probably like 16, probably from 16 to about 19. Just and then strongman too. I was getting into strongman pretty big for a while there. I just loved the stone lifting, being as athletic as I could be. I tell people I'm 5'7". On the times that I am squatting 1,000, I'm about 5'7". But if it's been a while and I've had a few deep tissue massages, I've decompressed my spine, I'm more like 5'8". So it kind of depends on what time of the year you kind of catch me. But so I did compete. I did fairly well in strongman. But there was, like you said, a tipping point, and I snuck backstage in 2009, backstage where the strongman were. And I met like Nick Best,
Oh.
Travis Odemeyer, Big Z. Like I was just kind of like walking around back there, and nobody was checking anything. So I'm just walking back there, and I sent a message out to Travis Odemeyer not too long ago, just because I don't know if you know his story at all, but he had a real rough few years there. And people can go see that podcast if they want to hear more about that story. It's not my story to tell, but the first person ever to tell me like, hey man, stay away from the drugs, stay away from like getting heavy into like using things like performance enhancers, was actually Travis Odemeyer. When I snuck back there and I was talking to him, I was like, and I don't know if he remembers this conversation. I was about 210, 220 pounds, and I was getting ready, man. Like, I was sold, whatever it takes. Like, that, like when they did statistics on the Olympics and they asked Olympic athletes if you were guaranteed a gold medal, but you would die within 5 years of winning that gold medal, would you still accept the gold medal or would you take second? And it was like something like 70 or 80% were like, yeah, I take the gold medal.
Yep.
Like that was me. I was sold, whatever it took, kind of deal. And after talking to him, he's like, don't do it, man. Like, you're 20. I think 2009, I would have been like 19, you know, getting ready to turn 20 here in a little bit. So, like, he was like, don't do it now. If you want to make that decision, make it way later in life. Give it at least a decade, if not more. Get as strong as you possibly can, raw, and go from there. And I was like, okay, like if Travis, like at that time, Travis was one of the best stone lifters. He was one of the best deadlifters. He was at the top of the sport for a long time. Then that same year, um, I I went into I was training at a gym called World Gym, and I met the same massage therapist as that did Ed Cohen, and got talking to him, and then another guy who was he was a Chicago cop. He knew Ed, and he would just happen to be training at that gym every once in a while. So they set me up with an appointment just to kind of go up there and see Ed on a Saturday, and I did a full power meet basically the day that I met Ed, because he was like, "Well, I mean, if you're gonna come train with us, like, go get your stuff. I want to see what you can squat, bench, and deadlift." And I had went out to Aurora, Illinois, and I had done a full strongman. Like, we did farmers walks, we did deadlifts, we did probably some overhead press, stones, all that stuff. Like, it was like a 6 hour workout. I was helping another guy get prepped for a qualifier to go to World's Strongest Man. Like, he was on that track. Yeah, I mean, the guy was like 6'7", I think. He was pushing 400 pounds, and like he just had me come out there to push him. Like, so I would train with the same weights he did. It was just like, could he stay faster than me on everything? Um, and so when I came in that day, Ed was like, okay, go pay the man downstairs. We'll see you on Monday. And he asked me that day. He said, what federation do you compete in? I was like, I don't, wherever the meet is. And he was like, you're gonna compete USAPL. Are you on anything? And I was like, no. And he's like, good. You're never gonna be on anything. Go pay the man. I'll see you on Monday. So it was very early on that that conversation happened of like, I'm not taking any performance enhancers. I'm just, it run what you run. So it was very, very early on. We had those conversations.
That's interesting because Ed with his history and whatnot. But I mean, who would know better than the people that have potentially made the mistakes? What would you say of your time with Ed Cohen? What would you say the most beneficial piece of advice or something that really stuck out from him that he told you?
Man, I mean, you're talking a lot.
Yeah.
Just a lot of lifting advice and life advice. I see him as basically an older brother. So um, you know, man, to single out one piece of advice that he gave me is tough. You know, just I think just the presence of being consistent. You know, it never was about being the best at every single lift,
Right.
or like coming in and being the best squatter, best bencher, best deadlifter. It was about consistently coming in to improve. And it wasn't like a specific conversation that we ever had, um, or anything like that. It more or less had to do with just seeing everybody else doing the same thing. Like, there was always a constant, like, hey, you may have the world record, but you still need to improve.
Yeah.
Um, that would be one of the biggest things. Um, and then, just being around somebody who's always willing to help, correct technique or talk shop, or, reps and sets and things like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, his biggest thing always was open the taint, and, for squat. So, you can't go wrong with that one either. So,
Yeah.
but, yeah, Yeah, and the thing is just because it's just tough to like single out one specific thing because the
Yeah.
life lessons as well as like the training. Like I've been going over training and stuff, and like people are like, "Oh, you're talking about this modality of training," whether it's like RPE or you know, there's the Chico programming and stuff like that. And I'm like, I mean, well, I guess, but that was always kind of part of that was always intertwined in my training. Like
Right.
we didn't like single out these specific things. It was a lot of I think Dave Tate talks about it, auto regulation, where you're finding out what things work for you and filtering them into your ever evolving program. So, like, if you were to look at and I have my programs from 20 years ago, I have my books. Like, if you were to look at my program then and my program now, there are a lot of similarities, but things are structured differently, or I've had to you could see along the way like, oh, he must have been like having some like life issues through here because things have had to change. COVID was a huge issue for training because I didn't have the weight that I needed to train with and stuff. Gyms weren't open, so like you could see, where things had to adjust. But I've primarily been using the same program this whole time. It's just evolved with what I need at that, need from program to program.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm not a big proponent of jumping from program to program or program style to program style. So, find the one that you got the best gains with and then start to adjust that over time. And like when I say time, I'm talking like 5 to 10 years, not oh, I did it for 3 months. Now let's adjust it for the next 3 months. Like small changes, maybe, but
Yeah.
not a total revamp.
Yeah. And with the on the topic of drugs, something recently that happened that was pretty interesting is the WPO came out, and they are kind of the one of the top federations, definitely top two federations running multiply meets. And a lot of people that I've talked to have the differentiation of when we set aside the equipment, we exclude the differences in the equipment itself. We go, okay, single ply, mostly drug tested, multiply, mostly not. But now the WPO came out and said, hey, we're going to do drug tested sides and we're going to do this and that and the other. Is that something that entices you at all to jump into multiply, or are you single ply just kind of staying there?
Right now, I would say I'm mostly single ply. I I don't know. Like, uh, who knows what the future holds? Like I said, I was totally like, we were sent on World Games was my last meet,
Yep.
so I hadn't like said goodbye to the sport yet. But like, there wasn't also an instance, anyways, when I was coming off the platform from my third deadlift. I was I felt like I was done.
Yeah.
But like now, like I want to continue going. I think I have a lot left in the tank. I think I've got a decade, maybe a decade and a half left. As long as I can get my health under control, like when you're somebody like I'm not a tall person, you know what I mean? So like carrying the extra weight does affect my health. So I've had a lot of conversations with Jeremy and we've talked about, hey, like if I need to drop 10 or 15 pounds in the off season and then gain it back gradually just to make sure that my health stays on point, we may have to do that, and that might just be something I have to suck it up, so because like nobody likes losing 10 to 15 pounds, like it's not fun. um so like as far as like getting into multiply gear and stuff, I'm not going to say no, because I think that the minute that you say no, you kind of pinhole yourself. Because I mean, like we talked before we got on the podcast today. I am a lifter that if if every federation just decided to stop throwing meets tomorrow, I'm still lifting heavy moving forward. Like the training does not stop. I'm just still doing it for myself, but I have nowhere to go and be like, hey, this is the package that I brought this year. Was it better than everybody else's package that they brought? So yeah, if there was an instance where it made sense, I think it's Article 14 for the IPF really does keep us from being able to do any of those kinds of things. So while I am still in the IPF, and I plan on, I mean, um, Powerlifting America has been very good to me, and the IPF has, the meets that I've went to, everybody's, like I said, been respectful. The refs have been great. The volunteers, spotters. One thing I just want to make a call out to: if you've been a spotter in an international meet that I've been to, you did an awesome job. Like those people, like they're like pit crews now. These guys are on point. So that's a side thing. But if it ever were to come down to where there was an opportunity for me to go multiply, I have no reason to say like, oh, I would never do that. Um, but we're also talking a different training style, because the bench needs to go up 200 to 300 pounds. The squat's going to go up probably 200 pounds, just to stay competitive.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to put 200 pounds on my squat, probably 300 on my bench, if not more. And I'm going to have to be deadlifting what I am now, plus maybe another 20 to 30 kilos,
Yeah.
so another, 40 to 60 pounds in my deadlift. So we're not talking, oh, you went from single ply, all your lifts stayed the same. Now you're in multiply, and it's just a little bit easier on your joints, to do that. No, all the weight gets heavier.
Yeah.
Your central nervous system is fried all the time now. And so that's where I would, and you've had guests on that are, multiply lifters, or guys who are benching in that 900-pound range. And I have already started like, hey, what does that look like if you're benching, you know, 800 this week? What do you do next week? Well, from what I've gathered, a lot of your guys have said that next week is a heavyish raw, maybe some of the like, Titan Rams or something like that for some heavy-ish work, but nothing that's super crazy. And then they're back in the shirt a full 2 weeks later.
Yep.
To give their central nervous system time to catch up. And as far as I can remember, most of those guys are only benching heavy. They're not really accounting in squats and deadlifts in there at that point.
Yeah.
So it's like when you start accounting all that in, and that's why I think Blaine Sumner, what he did when he squatted his 500 kilos, or what was it, 512 and a half or something, like he then turned around and also benched over 9. And then he also pulled, I think, like 390 kilos. So almost 880 pounds. Like your central nervous system is fried. So, yeah, if there was an opportunity, long answer to a short question, I wouldn't say no to it. But as of right now, I'm having a lot of fun with single ply. I'm enjoying competing. Like I said, I'm enjoying, bench press days now, and learning the different techniques. And I enjoy the community, the different people that are around, to compete with and be around.
Yeah, and you look at someone like Blaine Sumner. I mean, also one of the coolest things that we ever could have saw but didn't was, like a Dave Hoff versus Blaine Sumner type of situation would have been really,
Right.
really cool to see. But like Blaine Sumner's a very interesting case as well, because you look at his accomplishments on the platform, and you would expect this guy, man, he's got a crew, he's got it down, like, and you look at his training, and he's in his garage, and he's got the plate catchers, and
Right.
it's like, it's just, dude, just like the balls you have to have, man, to take those type of weights over your fucking face, and it's just like you and some plate catchers and like some safeties, and hopefully it goes
Yeah,
well.
he's on a different level. I think we were talking a little bit beforehand. It's typically like my heavy days if I'm not in Indianapolis with the HPT team. Um, like it's me and my brother and maybe my 5-year-old nephew running around. Like, so like it's a similar situation,
Yep.
but not as quite as intense as Blaine's training,
Yeah.
because there were a lot of times he was taking multiple 1,000 pound plus squats by himself,
Yeah.
and then also benching into the nines by himself.
Yep. Yep.
So like yeah, definitely. And the crazy thing about that is and I can't remember if he had anything to help like hand the weight out, but a lot of people who don't train in equipment don't realize you don't really have that range of motion when you have the shirt on.
Nope.
So I would have to go back and I'd have to look at some of his training and stuff. But like I'm pretty sure he was like unracking the weight for himself a lot of times, which
Yeah.
is like if you talk to anybody who benches that heavy, that's a huge no no. Like you don't do that.
Yeah.
And he was like, he's just like one of those guys. It's just like, yeah, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like I'm just gonna do it.
Yeah. He's a freak, dude. And
Yeah.
a lot of the time too with the equip guys to talk a lot about the suits and the shirts and all that kind of stuff, but also the accessory equipment, right? The knee wraps, the wrist wraps.
Yeah.
For me, when I was using Mark Bell's wrist wraps for a long time, and I had talked to Roman Mustachio, and he was talking to me about Overkill. Braden was talking about Overkill, and I was like, let me try these Overkill wrist wraps. And man, I don't know if I've ever noticed such a difference in just the quality of equipment than when I went
Yeah.
from something like what Mark Bell was producing to the Overkill wrist wrap. For you, what are you using for like your wrist wraps, your knee wraps, and have you seen variances in different brands that you've used?
So been using the Titan Golds a lot. And then Titan Gold wrist straps. I've played with some other ones from Inzer and such, but primarily going with the Titan brand of equipment. It was actually I'm gonna try it. It was advised to me to try the blue. I forget what their blue ones are called, the ones with the blue stripes in them,
Mm-hmm.
because they were talking about how like you can get the golds are better for like lockout power, and the blues are better for like rebound out of the hole. And they were talking like a couple of the guys were talking to me. They're like, dude, you don't really have a problem with standing up with the weight once you get it halfway up. They're like, the more weight you can sit down with in the hole and stand up with is going to be your bread and butter. You're going to add more weight to your total and your squat by being able to do that. And it made sense. And they were like, so you want to use the blue? I think they're called Blue Devils or something. I don't remember. I'd actually have to look it up. Um, but yeah, like so I'm gonna experiment with it, and that's the other fun thing is like when you're competing raw, a lot of times you're not really making adjustments on equipment. You're not like trying out new things. Like there is no variation to a lot of your training as far as like unless you're just doing reps and sets and like using different bars and like all that can be fun. But like we do have the other aspect of it of when you're competing and you can like okay, I've got these 7 or 8 different kinds of knee wraps that are available to me, like well what's the best one for my squat, where that can be a daunting task of like oh now you have to try each one of them out, but like also like that can be kind of fun,
Yeah, yeah,
like seeing what works best. um One question, do I have time to hit the restroom real quick?
yeah. Absolutely, man.
Are we able to pause it? Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
be right back.
right.
Sorry
Awesome.
about that.
No, no worries, dude.
I'm pounding the liquids and
Yeah.
it got out of hand there for a second.
No problem, bro.
But yeah, where were we at?
What about like what are you using for wrist wraps? Did you really notice a difference in wrist wraps at all, or was it
Oh,
kind of just
yeah, stiffer wrist straps are what I kind of like for bench. Squats a little bit here and there. I usually use the same wrist straps all the way through squat and bench. But I did notice I like a higher up on as high as I can get it on the hand, and as stiff as possible. Because that sometimes that bar will roll just a little bit in the hand. I mean, and like when I talk about roll, it's like maybe an eighth of an inch,
yeah,
but
yeah,
that much pressure on the wrist and stuff. And then squat, because I'm an ultra wide squatter, you know, a lot of times the wrist straps are just there just in case like I have to pull my elbows underneath me, like if my back's not locking in well,
Yeah.
and just to protect the wrists a little bit. So not as necessary on squat, but I still use them because of all that pressure that comes down on the wrists and the arms.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had a lot of elbow issues from squatting. So yeah, definitely would say the stiffer wrist straps are what I lean towards,
Yeah.
and I know that there are some other lifters that tend to go more towards the kind of a softer wrap,
Yep.
as it were. So I would say experiment if you can. Find a single ply lifter. He's probably got 4 or 5 different pairs in his bag if you're a new lifter, and ask him if you can use them.
Yep.
And the best way is if he's a super heavy or close to that. Offer him to buy him a hamburger
Yeah.
or something, and he'll let you use some of his equipment.
Yeah, dude. Speaking of which, being a super heavy guy, do you stick to any like specific type of diet outside of like just getting enough protein, or is it just like whatever I see I eat?
So it's funny, Jeremy and one of his strongman athletes that was at the seminar with us this weekend. So Jeremy, Megan, and I were all talking about kind of dieting and stuff, and it was funny because um, we all kind of agreed like you get your protein in,
Yep.
and then you get in like the simple or light carbs that you can handle, and then making sure that your fats are where they need to be. After that it's kind of like game on. So like we were kind of like they were kind of laughing because I do a lot of slow cookers. I like like I'll have a pot of turkey, ground turkey. I like ground stuff, so like ground turkey, ground chicken, ground beef. I'll have a steak, but like I'm not a big like have to have my sirloin steak guy. Like if I have my white rice and I have either my ground turkey, primarily it's been ground turkey and ground beef right now. And I have my ground turkey and my white rice, put a little bit of barbecue sauce on it. Sometimes, I'll have a couple of different kinds of barbecue sauce or some ketchup. And I mean, that's pretty much, the deal there. Some of the women in my life have been telling me more vegetables would be a good idea. So I have been filtering in the mixed vegetables into the diet, into the mix a little bit. So, but yeah, that's primarily it. If I'm out and about and I need to grab something, because I'm like out doing, running errands or something, I try to get the cleanest food that I can get while I'm on the go.
Yeah.
Whether, and that's usually either Chipotle or Qdobo or something like that.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm not saying that those are the best options. It would be best if you could take your own food with you because you've prepped it, it's clean, that it's, been cooked properly. Um, but when you have to and you're out and about, find the cleanest thing you can afford and do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you have like a? For me, I have my biggest kryptonite is like burgers. Like if a new burger place opens within like a 20-mile vicinity of me, like I'm gonna go there. Like there's zero self control. I'll be there. Burgers, milkshake. Do you have any kind of like cheat food that just like really calls to you that you can't really stay away from, or is hard to stay away from?
Um, so, I have one thing I do have to call out is one of the big things with my diet here recently, was before World Games, Jeremy, due to the situation and everything, Jeremy invited me down to his place, and I lived with him for like 3 weeks, almost 4 weeks leading into World Games. And I'm not going to say that he monitored my diet, but he like was able to give a lot of insight on the spot of like, um, should we be eating that? You know, and it really cleaned things up for me. And it was like that little bit of a kick because I did have, when I get stressed out, and I don't know if this is for anybody else, but when I'm high stress, like work is stressful, training stressful, relationships are stressful. Like when all the stress comes down on you at one time, I get a sweet tooth, man. Like, I mean, I like that whole thing of like I did a line and it was a line of Oreos. Like, dude, I could dust a package of Oreos. and those are terrible for you. Like, as far as the ingredients and stuff, like, that is like one of the worst things you can eat. So, just kind of like after I had that little bit of a time off of where, we were really like monitoring my diet, we were like keeping away from any of the junk foods and stuff. It kind of reset me, and now like I used to like eat cheesecake all the time. Like my pre-meat meal was like cheesecake and uncrustables. Like
Yeah.
I'd have like three uncrustables and a half a cheesecake, and I'd be like, man, like we're ready to go. Like I'm in a good mood now.
Yep.
Um, but now anymore, like I have one of those my family for my I think it was like my 34th or 35th birthday. The Ninja Creamies had just came out. And I had been talking a lot about like just trying to fix my diet at that point and stuff. Like I felt like I was just like it was just a little sloppy, and I needed to get away from all the junk food and stuff. And I think it was like a couple of my brothers and sisters. Like we usually don't do like birthday gifts and stuff,
Yeah.
but like they all pitched together and they got me one of those Ninja Creamies. So like I've been working those in. So you're able to get some of that sweet tooth, you know? Like I sometimes I could put like I've noticed that um, dark chocolate will curve that sweet tooth real quick
Yeah.
because it's just so bitter.
Yep.
Well, you can get the semi sweet, and yeah, it just knocks my sweet tooth out. But also, those Ninja Creamy things, like the little bit of ice cream, like instead of going and getting, like Briars or
Yeah.
whatever ice cream and just hosing an entire quart, because I can do that too.
Yep.
I don't know about you, but like I can sit down, and if I'm watching a good movie, all of a sudden I look down and like that, it's gone.
Yeah, dude.
So sherbet, I love sherbet ice cream too. But like I've noticed that since I cleaned up my diet and I've been sticking to it, and just being consistent with my mindset of, hey, like I'm allowed to have a little bit of a sweet treat, but like you can't have it all. Like you
Yep.
can't have the whole half gallon or the whole quart of the ice cream. Get out what you're allowed to eat, enjoy it while you can have it, and move on.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And what about, so a lot of the time powerlifting is kind of a all encompassing sport, right? The sleep matters, the diet matters, the
Yes.
stress management matters, everything matters. So with you, what do you like to do outside of the sport? What are some of your hobbies, or what are you doing when you're not surrounded by powerlifting?
That's I think another reason why these competitions when I wouldn't win, like it wasn't anything that I had against any of the other competitors or anybody that I was competing with. Like if you won, congrats to you. But when I wouldn't win, the expectation going into a meet, my expectation from myself, and this comes from just something that I do before and after every meet, and then kind of on an annual basis, maybe a couple of times during the year. Um, I have a conversation with myself, and I imagine like what 15-year-old me, 20-year-old me, 25-year-old me, 30-year-old me, and 35-year-old me, if we were all sitting at a table and we were talking about whatever the next goal is, or like what I've accomplished, or like this meet, like so World Games, like if we were to take that one into account, my honest opinion, the expectation from everybody sitting at that table, all the different versions and ages of myself, I barely met the expectation. So like the squat, 15-year-old me would have been like, yeah, you should have did that like a decade ago. Like the expectations when I was that young was very high. 20-year-old me would have been like, yeah, it's cool to squat 1,000 pounds, but like you still didn't win. So um, just kind of working through all of that and having those conversations with myself. I don't really have hobbies outside of powerlifting.
Yeah.
Like I do, I have a Steam account, and I have a couple of games on there that every once in a while, if I have some extra time, I'll hop on, and I don't play online. I play
Yeah.
It's inside the game. It's on my computer. I'm not good enough to branch out into, these 10 and 12-year-old kids that just come around corners and sniping you every
Yeah.
time you reboot. Um, I do enjoy working on cars, so I we have my dad I bought him a 57 Chevy, and I painted it and started um refurbish or like rebuilding it. And so then I gave that to him, and we've been kind of working on it here and there, but like life has been chaos, as
Right.
you can imagine. Just with everything that happened in 2025, but also like the few years leading up. So we really haven't got to finish it yet. But then, I've also been very, always wanted to be self sufficient. So like I've learned how to work on cars. Right now the house that I'm in, my wife Jesse and I bought this house before she passed. We bought it in April, and so like I'm still remodeling stuff here. So as far as like hobbies, um, the best place to find me is in the gym. And a lot of times I've found that if I'm not personally training, I'm working with somebody else who is.
Yeah.
So I do have a lot of ties to the gym, as far as like what do I do on a daily basis. And like you said, everything is predicated. Almost all the decisions I make are based in this, and I can do that. I would say that somebody who has a family, kids and such, that's going to look a lot different. That there's going to be a lot of different decisions that are going to need to be made that you can't revolve your entire life around a sport that doesn't pay you anything. And ultimately, I think a lot of other lifters have said it. It ultimately it is good to have a hobby, and being strong is never going to be a weakness, as it were. It's
Yeah.
never going to be something that, like, just because you were strong a bad thing happened to you. But if we, at the end of the day, if we were to say, is it healthy for you? I think there's a point at which it becomes like, it's really not great for your health anymore.
Yeah,
It's kind
fair
of
enough.
actually the opposite. But what other things would you be doing? Would you, and there are a lot of other very bad hobbies people can have. And I'm not going to start naming them off, because what I consider a bad hobby and what somebody else considers a bad hobby is, might not be the same. So I'm
Yeah.
not on here to call anybody out for other things they do. But
Yep.
yeah, yeah, I don't. I tend to kind of stay to myself. I love to spend time with my family. Like, I go and I see my nieces and nephews as often as I can, because they're within a 20-minute drive. So, just very, I guess, still family oriented. That if I'm not training, I'm trying to help others or do something for somebody else. As well as taking care of my own responsibilities. Working and such like that.
Yeah. And with the training, there's so many different modalities of training. Would you say that your training fits into a camp in particular, like a conjugate, a linear periodization, something like that? Or how does your training look being an elite powerlifter?
So I would say that it's mostly linear periodization. Like I said, there are a lot of aspects of a lot of different styles of training that have just found their way into my programming. So I do have an aspect of, like, so there are people who, I can't remember I guess it would be kind of more of a conjugate, but also like kind of a wave
Mm,
programming, where it's like every 3 to 4 weeks things are adjusting. So I do also have elements of that, where I have parts of my training, um, that are going in waves, where it's like every 4 weeks it's either like I'm changing out the piece of equipment that I'm using, or I'm changing out like how heavy and how hard the reps are. So just to give an example, when I'm using the bench adders, um, if like they have levels, so like if there's level 1, 2, and 3, for the first 4 weeks, if I'm using level 1, the weight's obviously not going to be as heavy, and I'll probably have a little bit more volume in there. But then 4 weeks later or 3 weeks later, I'll change it out for level 2 of the assistance. But then we're adding a lot more weight to the actual bar, so that my body's acclimating to the heavier weight. And then maybe I do that for 2 or 3 weeks, and then I'll do 2 weeks of level three, and then we throw the bench shirt on, and then that I've acclimated my body to heavier weight. I'm able to put the shirt on and immediately get into like heavier reps in singles and such without having to go, okay, 6 weeks out from wanting to take a heavy single in the shirt. I've got to put the shirt on and like take 2 boards and 3 boards and all this other stuff. So that's one thing, because like you said, training in a garage gym, where it's just me and my brother, a lot of times like those workouts can get long.
Yeah.
If you're talking, you have to warm up, take your last heavy single raw, then you jump into a bench shirt, and then you got to work up to a heavy 2 board, and then you're taking like 5 doubles at a 2 board, and then you take the shirt off, and now you've got 3 to 4 accessories to do. I mean, that could turn into a 3 to 4 hour training day right there. And you know, he's got kids, so we can't be just in the gym for 4 hours on a bench day all the
Yeah.
time. But using those, like I said, the bench daddies or the Titan Rams, it doesn't take as long to adjust things. You can still lift with the heavier weight, and then go move on with training. So then instead of a 4 hour workout, it can be like a 2 to 2.5.
Yeah. And one of the things I noticed too about getting into the equipment is my jumps were different. So how, when you're working
Yep.
up to these sets, how do your jumps look? Are you 50 pound, 25, 100? Like, how are your jumps looking for these massive numbers?
So for squat, a lot of times it's just a plate at a time until I get to you know, close to where I'm going to be ending for the day. And then based on whether it's a reps day or it's singles day or whatever, it'll change from there. So a lot of times, it will be in the 30 to 50 kilos for the squat. Deadlift, pretty similar. That could be a 20 kilo, or it could be upwards of like 40. It just kind of depends on, like I said, are we taking reps or are we taking singles? What are we focused on? Are we focused on technique? Or are we just trying to load the bar up?
Yeah.
Um, Bench, because I would say bench is mostly my kryptonite right now, it varies a lot based on how each rep looks. So we really do pay attention to how did that first warm up, look. Were we able to touch it? Was it to about where one board is? Okay, boom, like, okay, it looks good, go up 20 kilos. If it doesn't look good, maybe we take a 10-kilo jump or a 5-kilo jump, retake that, as a warm up, and kind of see where we're going to land, and then just get up. Because I'm still learning that bench shirt. I would say that somebody who's had a lot more experience and knows their equipment better than I do as far as bench goes would probably have a lot different way, like you're saying, more of a set system of like we take these 50-kilo jumps to here, then it goes down to a 30-kilo jump, then a 20-kilo jump, and then they're into their working sets or whatever. I'm more, unfortunately, right now, bench is a lot of feel and what it looks like.
Yeah. And I've noticed the same for myself. It comes down to a lot of like intuition because I feel different from day to day. Like, was work longer that day? Did I get hydrated enough? Did I eat enough? Like, where are my carbs at? Like, it more so becomes like intuitive more than, for me at least, more than like a set schedule of this is how we're going to go up. Because just the way that I feel every day is different, and my garage is cold as fuck. So, like, is it warm in there?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
how long does it
Oh,
take?
I don't know about you, but last night I was deadlifting, and how everything worked out for everybody else's schedule, I was training alone. So we're not super heavy right now. But yeah, dude, 17 degrees outside, 30 degrees in the garage. We've got one of those propane torpedo heaters and like a little space heater. I got it up to like 50, 55, but like still that the bar is still really cold at that temperature.
Yeah.
And so like I'm not saying it was like cold, but it definitely was not warm in that garage.
Yeah.
So I completely get where you're at. Like it's at that point it is definitely like if I was benching, definitely safeties are all the way up, they're dialed in. And you know, if I'm in the bench shirt, for sure, like you got to be very intuitive at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, because I have you when I go upstairs, I bring my dog with me. So all I have up there is a space heater. So the space heater is like where he is, like because I want to keep him
Yeah.
warm. So it's like so I'm just freezing my ass off, and it feels like my joints feel like a cold rubber band, like about to snap all
Yep.
the time. But yeah, man. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover? Anything else that I left out before we depart here?
I don't think so. I think we hit on like a lot of really good stuff. Kind of an introduction into um, just kind of like my journey, as it were. There's a lot of things that are still in there that
Yeah,
we're not able to get into because like I mean, I had the pleasure of I've had the pleasure of competing on the same stage as Dave Ricks a few times, and I've been able to train alongside him a couple of times as well. And just like when you think of somebody like him who has a 40 plus year powerlifting career, there's a lot of stories in there,
yeah,
like a lot.
yeah,
So no, I mean I really appreciate you reaching out and being able to come on and kind of tell some of my story. And especially like talk about just kind of like the World Games ramp up and maybe some lifters will take some of the new young lifters or some of the people who are just trying to find their way and like what do they want to do next, can look into that World Games and you know get some inspiration on that. And just find what's fun,
yeah,
because at the end of the day, we can talk international competing, we can talk state and local competing and stuff like that. And, I guess that would be one of the big things that Ed left me with was, be kind, do your best, and do what's fun. Like yes, doing sets of 20 and 30 reps or like squatting till you can't walk or benching until you can't lift your arms, like while it can be fun in the moment, the next day is usually not all that fun. But like when you do that, like competing alongside people that you enjoy competing alongside, because at the end of the day, most of us, and I don't think that a year, maybe even two after I'm done competing in the sport, they may not nobody may remember I ever even competed. So at that point it's like do the things that are fun, compete where you want to compete at, find a group of people that want to improve and get after it, and be kind in the gym. Don't be one of those people that doesn't let people work in or like hogs the weights or anything like that. We're all just trying to get better. We're all just trying to work through our demons, as it were.
yeah.
So um and if you have to train in a garage, you don't have to have all the fancy equipment. A squat rack and a bar is all you need to start for most people, and you can acquire equipment after that, or get a cheap membership at a gym that has some dumbbells and stuff, and start doing your accessories there. Like there's a lot of ways to this that you can make it work to be able to improve and get better. Because at the end of the day, getting up and moving is what we need to do as a society, anyways. So get healthier, be happy, lift, you know. And that's why I love going down to Indianapolis and training with that team, with the HBT team, is because we've got a lot of people that are competing at all different levels, and it's just great to be able to go out there and train alongside people that have the same mindset. So which you've probably noticed doing your podcast is that you're talking to people who have a lot of the same mindset, a lot of the same struggles, and they've had to adapt to certain bad situations or things that didn't go right, and at the end of the day, it's just having that mindset of improving, getting better, and being a good person.
Yeah, and touching on being kind before we wrap up here, that's a really important point. Every Friday, I have a babysitter for my dog, so I'm able to go to the gym after work. Um, and I have my buddy Sherman is also equipped single ply. So, but we are in a powerlifting gym, but everyone's raw, right? Besides us. But
Mm-hmm.
we have people come up to us all the time and ask us questions about the equipment and stuff like that, and we're just so happy that they want to talk about it. So, and it's like you have to remember also in that time, in that space, you are the representative of that side because it's like they're not seeing
Right.
anyone else that's in the equipment. So like they see you. So if they come up to you and you're a dickhead or you're standoffish or like whatever, arrogant, then maybe in their mind they start to apply that connotation to the that entire side of the sport. So it's like you are representing that side of the sport. It was the same way at the meet that I did on the 13th of December. Like there was only four of us. There were supposed to be five, but someone
Oh,
dropped
okay.
out. So there was only four of us. So it's like I was the only single ply guy. Then we had all multi and like one unlimited. So it's like we are representatives of that side of the sport because this is all they're seeing right now is us. So it's like if we can draw positive attention to this side of the sport and say like, yeah, like this is awesome, explain it and go out of our way to show how rad the equipment is essentially, then hopefully that'll also uptake the amount of competitors in the sport, especially in this area because there's not too much, right?
Right.
So
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Um, and I don't know about you, but like growing up for me, you had to find people that were powerlifting or lifting heavy. Like I was lucky where I landed, but for the first, five, yeah, probably 5 to 7 years, like I was just kind of like looking for the strongest people. I got the best, training partners that I could. And at the end of the day, you had to find people that were strong and learn from them by traveling to where they were and basically being like, "Hey, I'll load your weights. Just teach me what you know." And that's been a weird thing for me, and I think Braden and a couple of the other like competitors and stuff is like everybody wants to go online and find the information there when it's like my mindset is like I can read an article or I can read something about the sport or like what somebody did, but if I can actually get next to that person, train alongside them, you start to see like what they said
yeah,
makes sense, but what they're actually doing is like, oh, like yeah, for like to write it down, you had to write it this way, but like what you're actually doing is this, and this makes a lot more sense,
yep,
so
yep,
yeah, and that's what I would tell lifters. Hey, man, like if you're kind and you approach it the right way, don't walk up to somebody who just took a max effort lift, get right in their face, and be like, "How did you do that? Teach me everything you know." Like, obviously, that's probably not the right time. But like, if somebody's in between sets and it looks like they're into their accessories, if they're not doing their main movement, probably not during their main movement is the right time. But like if they're into their accessories, I don't know many of the people that I've trained with alongside or anything like that. If they're just doing their accessories and they're in their rest period in between sets, that if you ask them a question, they won't be like, "Oh yeah, let me like I can give you some answers," but also like I have a timer set. So like whenever my timer goes off, I'm like, "Give me a second." I hit my set and then I'll continue the conversation. Just,
yep.
know that if you're looking for information from somebody, you're probably going to have to spend a lot more time listening to them than they're actually talking because they're probably still working out.
Yeah, 100%. So the last thing I want you to do is plug all your social media where people can find you, interact with you, follow along with your journey.
Yeah, so my Instagram is the albino rhino. And then, like I've said a couple of times, I think Jeremy Hartman is my primary like coach right now. I train with the team and stuff. So Hartman Performance Training Systems. You can find that on Instagram. Jeremy Hartman he also has his personal social media there. And then my brother is the Reckless Rhino. And then yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't have a lot of a huge social media presence. I'm doing my online coaching now, and I don't really post out a whole lot because I don't. We're in the garage gym. Like the lighting and the angles aren't the greatest, and then also like um, it is hard sometimes to set up that stuff when I've got my nephew and then my niece. Sometimes she'll be out there with us too.
Yeah.
So, cameras get knocked over and stuff gets broken. So, but But yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah.
I encourage anybody to at least set a goal, whether it's to get 5 pounds stronger over the next year, make the small goals and small things turn into big things real fast.
100%. Right on, man. Well, thank you for joining me for episode 20, man. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks, man.